right, stand by. Roll sound.
Speed.
Roll camera.
Speeding.
Slate.
Scene one, take one, mark.
And action. Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to Burnie's Applebox here Friday at 2 o'clock on the Applebox Network. Listen, today, and I know I say this a lot, but we have a show that I'm blown away by. We have somebody here who is really literally one of my heroes. We've worked together, we've known each other via social media and personally for several years now, but this is the most amazing woman that I know in the industry because she has a list a mile long of people she's interviewed, and she's one of the most in-demand producer-directors that I know in Los Angeles. Sarah Hunt. How are you doing, Sarah?
Lovely to be here, Burnie.
Oh, you sweetheart. Thank you so much for coming down because I know we have been talking for a while and I know I've tried to get you down here and you are constantly booked. And it comes out of nowhere. It comes fast. Yeah. And you do just, I mean, very, very cool jobs. Some of the best. And we'll get into all that. But thank you so much for making time for us today.
No problem. I mean, the roads were fantastic. And I've noticed since January the 1st and the new laws that passed in California, there's a lot less road rage. People are far more mellow.
Oh, really? Really? I'll have to watch my P's and Q's then. Yeah, driving in LA, that is something I think you could do a regular daily show about. You know what I mean? Beyond traffic. But, you know, one of my, and really getting off point here, but one of my little dreams in what I thought would make great, like, reality video, recording people as they drive. You know, because I know what I say. And most of the time, I'm pretty glad nobody else knows what I say. But, you know, in LA, it's definitely a part of the world, yeah, you know, that you have to deal with. But let me talk to you about, and let me just tell everybody out here, too. This woman does everything. And just, I mean, you have interviewed hundreds of celebrities.
Yeah.
I suppose it could be close to 1,000 maybe, but I know for sure hundreds and hundreds. And not just like the person on this week's show just before it got canceled. I don't think there's anybody you haven't talked to. Let's put it that way, right?
I'm very, very lucky. I get phone calls usually from the UK.
Okay.
And somebody says, hey, we're making this documentary and we need... Have you interviewed Steven Spielberg before? And I'm like, yes. Mm-hmm. And so I get to meet A-list celebrities, directors, right, producers, people from the history of Hollywood.
Yes, yes.
I tend to sadly forget who I've interviewed, and then one day they'll die, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know.
That's when you remember.
That's when I remember.
Yeah. Politicians,
scientists.
Yes.
You know, I'm blessed because I get flown all over the country, and I walk into people's worlds and
learn from them.
And learn from them
too. And then you have because here's another thing is I know that, you know, Sarah hired me on the Rolling Stones. So I worked with Sarah doing the Rolling Stones and we did interviews with all the Stones on the Sticky Fingers history, the Sticky Fingers album. That's what it was, the anniversary of that.
It was the re-release of Sticky Fingers.
Yeah. Yes. And then I watched you interview Don Was and a lot of other big players in the music industry. And I watched you do it while you had knowledge. You had knowledge of the project, obviously, and what they wanted to do. I watched you work interview magic. And let me tell you, being in the business for 20 years, I saw the best interviewing I've ever seen in my entire career from you.
Gosh.
And that's because you were working it almost like an editor works it. And in this way, you knew what they needed, you knew what they had to get in the can, and you knew whether you were getting it or not, which is a very tough thing, I think, for a lot of people to really get outside of their own comfort zone and understand what the final product needs to be and how you get that person to say it. And you worked everybody just so professionally, and did. And it wasn't just me. Mike was there with me at the time, and we were talking, and we were just saying, he says, I've interviewed hundreds of people himself, mostly corporate, mostly industrial, all that. He goes, man, she didn't miss a beat. And that's why you get called all the time. That's why you're working all the time. I'd like you to just take that point for a moment. Think about it. First, just name, I know you got some names here because we can never remember what we do, right?
No.
So give us some names of who you've interviewed and then talk to me about interviewing a celebrity.
I'd like to back up.
Okay, sure.
Before that, because you said about knowing what the editor would want.
Right.
That goes back to film school. And my film school lecturer, Derek Wallbank, who's sadly deceased, I remember him saying, nobody should be allowed to direct until they had been in an edit, until they had sat through an edit.
Oh, I totally agree.
And saw what was needed. You need that cutaway.
Yeah.
You have to know.
You have to get this coverage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes from.
Okay.
And in interviews, I like people. I genuinely.
Which you have to do.
I genuinely like people.
Yes.
And I'm interested.
Yes.
And you have to listen. You know what it's like. You have to listen to what people are saying. You
That's
cannot
right.
have a list of questions.
You can't fake it.
No.
Yeah, you can't fake it. And if somebody says something interesting and you're just on to the next point, you've blown it as an interviewer.
Yeah.
You have blown it. So with that, when you're with somebody, and I know you too, you haven't ever told me this, but I'm going to just surmise it here, is that you're not looking at a celebrity. You're looking at a person. And I think that makes all the difference in the world. And everybody who intersects you, and I saw it with the Stones, I've seen it with other people do it, you immediately become human to them. You're not just a talking head.
I don't care about celebrity at all.
Yeah.
In fact, as a family, we haven't had a TV. We haven't had TV for 22 years.
And
now,
I've been to your home too. I know that's a fact.
So I haven't had TV the whole time I've lived in LA.
Wow.
Which means that very often I don't know the people I'm going to interview. I'm told you're going to interview Friends or the cast of West Wing.
Right. You haven't seen that.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm going to interview a person talking about their craft.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about, a
Right.
famous person.
Right.
I don't recognize people. They'll walk in and I won't recognize them.
Yeah.
And it puts you on a level playing field.
Yeah. And you know what? It's funny because people in our business who are into it, not just starting out, but they've been doing it for a long time. I think that is so there are so many people I go to do it. I go, and somebody, I'll tell them afterwards, oh, I did this person. You did? I've never heard of him before.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that. That's another thing too that people don't, I think, realize about celebrity in Hollywood, is there's a huge pecking order, if you will. From A to Z, that's a lot of people, and and you have a specific place. Now you may meteorically rise to A overnight, but you're still a D. You know what I mean, when you start out that day. So doing that, I think, is something. Knowing who you're talking to and what you got to get out of them is a big deal.
But you've got to remember that they basically want to do a good job.
Yes.
They've come out that day, they've taken a break in their busy schedule or schedule, depending if you're bilingual or not, American English. And they have come out to do a good job, to deliver, to talk about whatever you're talking about.
Right.
And it's your job to get the story out.
Right.
And make them look good, not to make them look an idiot.
Right.
So
and
you have
to
to know
dig
your
in where
stuff.
you bring a piece of that person to the audience.
Yeah.
That's really what you're doing. I worked, and you said, I know you have not worked in this genre or whatever, but for about 6 years I did press junkets for Sony Columbia TriStar. I had no idea even what a press junket was until the first time I was on set with it. I looked at that, and I'll tell you, I walked away with such respect for the actors and the directors. Anybody who had to sit there for that 8 hours, and I mean, sometimes 40, 50, 60 people would come in and get just 2 or 3 minutes answering the same questions over and over, or some little silly thing that the reporter wanted him to say or do, I just thought, oh my God, these people are so professional. There is no way I could have lasted 10. A normal person, you know.
Well, that's why I'm lucky, because I don't do press junkets.
Yeah.
My interviews tend to start out at about 40 minutes
Okay.
upwards.
Okay.
So usually I'll get at least an hour with a contributor.
Okay.
I've done interviews that have gone 2 and 3 hours long for those very in-depth documentaries where somebody's reliving a traumatic experience,
issue.
something like that. But generally with a celebrity, I get 40 minutes to an hour.
That's huge. And then I know your personality is very good. They loosen up, then they want to talk, right? And when you get somebody, when you're interviewing and they want to talk, you've won the day.
I find I share.
You share.
So because I've lived.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of experience in life.
sure.
I can generally coax things out of people because I'm very honest about myself.
Yes.
You know, and so the minute you start sharing, people forget the cameras, and you're basically you could be talking over a pint in a pub, and
Yeah.
people loosen up.
Yeah, yes. Well, it's kind of like what we do here, too. You know, I have my friends on, essentially, the people I've worked with, you know, and it's the same way. Everybody who is, they usually, I know you're not, but a lot of people come in here very nervous. You know, by the time you sit down and you start talking about issues back and forth, suddenly everything else is gone. You're just sitting there having a conversation, and that's what makes you so good.
Gosh.
That's what makes
Stop,
you so
Bernie,
good.
stop. I'm just blushing.
There's more where that came from. Tell us some of the people that you've interviewed, because I want just people to have a gauge. We'll
Okay.
talk about more specifics. Read it right off your list there. Don't
Well,
be shy.
you know, I was trying to work out, because I was trying to remember when I was driving down here.
Yeah.
So most of the main movie directors, so Spielberg, Ridley Scott, Christopher Nolan, George Lucas. Love George Lucas. He's
No.
hysterical.
That's great.
I've got a special place in my heart for the horror directors. So John Carpenter,
Okay.
the late great Wes Craven, who
Oh, wow.
was so bright.
Wow.
Ron Howard, Oliver Stone,
Mm-hmm.
Robert Zemeckis, Wolfgang Peterson, John Landis, and then people.
And that's the B list. Let's hear the A list.
Exactly. And then people connected to that. So Spielberg's cinematographer,
Janusz.
Janusz Kaminski.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very, very lucky.
Yeah.
I go into other people's worlds and find out what they do and why they do it.
So you know what, and just give us an idea, because there's people that I know would love to do what you do.
Yeah.
You know, that are in the industry right now, working, probably making good money, but they'd love to do what you do. And it's not just the names. I mean, you interview all kinds of people, people who are not names too. Tell me, like Janusz Kaminski, there's a classic. Now, that's something you're going to discuss with him. You're going to discuss the DP work. How do you go about, besides your husband being a DP, Simon, and we'll talk about him a little bit, but how do you go about picking somebody out? Let's just say it's audio, maybe, or somebody. How do you go about finding the pertinent and the best questions to ask?
Well, with Janusz?
Janusz?
Janusz.
I think it's Janusz.
Okay,
Yeah.
I probably pronounced it wrong on the day then. It was all about war films.
Okay.
So I'd been talking to Stephen, and it was natural that I'd go to his cinematographer.
Yeah.
So, you know, basically I watch the movies,
Yeah.
and then I want to know, did Stephen, you know, how much input
What was the
Stephen-
collaboration right
exactly.
there? Because that's fascinating to
Yeah,
me too.
yeah.
You know, how a director and the only other person with the director on his name in that movie. How are you coordinating that look?
Exactly.
How are you talking about that's you know, you could, in my mind, I could spend forever talking about that. You know, so that's it. You'll research the movie, and you had the advantage of talking to Steven Spielberg prior to that.
Prior, yeah.
So that gave you a lot of things that sparked your interest, and you could go them and find out. So that's sort of the formula a little bit there. It's because I know you do this huge research, right?
Research.
Tell me about your research.
I'm very good when I have a deadline. So I research last minute.
Okay.
I start the night before. I will often stay up very, very late, watching several movies or reading articles or listening to music or reading books. I read books on the plane going there. And that way it stays in, and I can remember it. And I can remember for about 12 hours. and then it's gone.
It's gone. When your interview is over, does it all just poof?
It's about sort of by the end of the day, by the next morning, which is awful because if I could remember it all, I'd be fantastic to be on a pub quiz team.
Oh, I'm telling you. Yeah, if we could already, that is the thing we discussed slightly before we came on the air too, is that we look at a job so intensely. Yeah. We have to almost live that job until the moment it's done. But it's the same for me in lighting. As soon as I'm done, as soon as the paper works out, that job is gone for me. I don't even think about it again. I probably couldn't even tell you the production company name, you know.
It depends for me on the job. So the interviews, you know, like we were talking about before we went on air.
Yeah.
You forget. One forgets who's been in the chair.
Yeah.
Jobs such as, you know, hour-long documentaries, especially where it's been something traumatic.
Yeah.
Where real people have been affected, they affect me for months.
Oh, I'll bet. The emotional part of it.
The emotional part of it, where I go into people's lives.
Yeah.
And I care about people.
Yeah, yeah.
And where you've seen people who've lost somebody, lost their home, lost their child.
Yeah.
When you leave that job, it's very, very, very hard to let it go.
How do you handle that?
Generally, it's a bit like surgeons. Mm-hmm. You know, surgeons have that humour.
Yeah.
Black humour.
Black humour,
Crews have it too. If you're working on a documentary and it's a very tough subject, you tend to go to the hotel bar at night and talk it through and joke.
Yeah.
And that's the way you get rid of it. You know, the same way that firefighters do.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about it.
You can't carry that baggage around. No. It will eat you alive if you do.
You know, you have to be like a bit like a therapist. So you open it and then you close it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Great advice too. Great advice for that. You know, I learned some things just prior to going on about your background in education, and it's so classic. I want you to first of all, tell us where you grew up. You know, just give us a little quickie bio about where you grew up and where you went to school and college and all that.
I grew up in the middle of England.
Okay. What was the town?
The town's called Birmingham.
Birmingham, I've heard of that.
Which is, you know, there's one reason to learn to drive. When I was growing up in the 70s, that's why you learned to drive. So you could get on the M1 at Spaghetti Junction. People need to Google Spaghetti Junction and get out of Birmingham. Yeah. Because it was a little bit like Detroit. It had a big motor industry that went bust. Right. And it was a very depressed place when I was growing up, with a very strong regional accent, which I didn't have. So Ozzy Osbourne has the accent.
Okay, so Ozzy's got the
accent.
Yeah.
And my parents weren't from Birmingham, so they didn't have the accent.
And they didn't know all the people that...
I didn't have the accent.
Yeah.
I got bullied at school.
So you're an outsider even with that. Yeah. Even though if you don't have that regional accent, then you're an outsider.
I was I was called posh because I didn't have the regional accent. So I initially wanted to act. Yeah. And I acted... Like so many people do in our industry. It's the first thing you see. That's you don't see behind the scenes. You see in front of the camera. Yeah. So you think you intersect the business like that. Sure. But I didn't particularly, you know, because growing up, there weren't movies. You know, we were lucky if we went to the movies twice a year. In Birmingham, too. Nobody was filming them there, right? Yeah. Nobody was filming there, but you didn't go to the movie. There were a couple of films of the year where... you know, children were taken to the movies by their parents. Okay. It was more staged. You know, Birmingham's very close to Stratford. We would have field trips to Stratford to see Shakespeare. Oh. So that was I was interested in stage. So they weren't as interested in film as they were stage because that was their historic context. Yes. Really. You know what? We're going to take a quick little break and then come back and I want to hear about college. Okay. All right. Sure great. Thing. All right. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Burnie. I own Burnie's Grip and Lighting, San Diego Grip and Lighting, and Los Angeles Grip and Lighting. You know, we pride ourselves on not only renting you the best equipment, but also giving you the best crews. And one of our core values here at Burnie's Grip and Lighting is that we give you the highest production value in the world. And remember, people used to say national, local. No,
we present world-class production value on every set. We also know budgets are very tight these days, and you've got 10 hours to get what you need in the can. We move ahead, we move fast, and we know what you need. When you rent from Burnie's Grip and Lighting, you have a partner on your production for that day that is making sure you are well taken care of. So anytime you're in Southern California, give us a call at 714-609-3545, and we'll take very good care of you. See you on set. We're here with Sarah Hunt, and we are talking. Sarah is a producer-director in Los Angeles, originally from the British Isles, and you are now an American citizen.
I became a citizen a long time ago.
Yeah, yes. And we were just talking about her educational background here and where she grew up. But I know you just told me this before the show, and I was fascinated by this. But tell me about your college experience.
Well, as I was saying before the break, I wanted to be an actress, a stage actress.
Yeah.
And I applied for drama school, was lucky enough to be accepted into a very well-known drama school in London. But in England, when I was growing up, the government would give you money, would give you a grant and pay for your education. However, they didn't see drama as a valuable asset.
Ah.
And they didn't give me a grant. The drama school held my place for a year. And my boyfriend at the time was at film school. He was at art college in Bournemouth, a very well-known college that was in regular competition with the Royal College of Art and the National Film School. So I started going into class with him, and I just went in. The film department knew I wasn't a student. The film lecturers actually asked me to apply, and they said, we'll have you. And I said, no, this is fantastic. I'm getting a free education.
So you were no tuition, no nothing. You were just hanging out, going to the same classes that your boyfriend went to, and getting this great film education.
Fantastic film education.
Wow.
So at Bournemouth, we learnt by making films.
Okay.
And by having visiting lecturers. So people like Jack Cardiff and Ozzie Morris, fantastic cinematographers from old Hollywood, would come in and teach us their craft. So I attended all the lectures. I went on location. I worked on all the movies. I acted in some of the movies. Yeah. And that's how I got my, move into TV and film. That I thought, actually, I don't want to act.
You want to be behind the scenes.
I want to be behind the scenes. I like this producing lark.
Yeah. No, that's phenomenal. And the fact that you had that much initiative and drive to stay with the things, even though you weren't getting an actual degree. But and once again, and this is what so many people, and I think a lot of people in our industry do understand this, but I try to tell this to new people. You have to be curious. You have to spend your own time learning what you need to learn. And that, I'll tell you, whatever you learned at this, look at the dividends it's paid now in your career.
I learned, well, Bournemouth College of Art was fantastic, and I'm a bit worried now that they're going to charge me retrospectively for my education. But I learned more on my first day on location than I learned in 3 years.
Of course. Nothing beats being on set. Yeah. Yes, you're very, very right. So tell me, what was the process then for you? Well, I guess, how long did you work in Britain in this industry?
I worked in Britain I went into the industry in '87. My first job was in music videos, a level 42 music video. I was a runner, which is PA in America. Mm-hmm. And I got my first job by knocking on doors in Soho. Any door that said production company, I knocked on the door and said, I can make great coffee, great tea, and I run.
So you went there personally?
Yeah.
You didn't send an email, you didn't send a letter.
Email didn't exist.
Right, okay, fair enough, yeah. But no letter, you knocked on that door, you wanted to see a face, you wanted to identify as a person, which is so huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And I started working in '87.
Okay.
Very quickly decided I didn't want to work in music videos and got a job as a freelancer for a production company in the early days of Channel 4 in the UK.
Okay.
And they were making documentaries.
Okay.
And they had me working on documentaries, and I suddenly realized this is what I wanted to do. You know,
Great.
this I wanted to work on real things I cared about.
Do you remember your first documentary? What was it?
I think my first documentary was about Bernard Levin, I think it was his name, yep, walking down Fifth Avenue. I didn't go to Fifth Avenue. I did a lot of the research, and it was a walk down Fifth Avenue.
Just a discussion?
Discussion about what he knew, you know, what he met on, who he met on Fifth Avenue,
Wow.
walking down.
Wow.
And that was the first one. Then we sent friends into Thailand to explore child prostitution in Thailand. And then I started bouncing from company
And
to
then
company.
you were sort of like a runner, researcher, sort of like Sarah, go find this out.
Yes.
What are these statistics?
Yeah.
All that stuff.
And again, remember, this is kind of before the internet. So I
Oh,
spent a lot of
wow.
the time at the...
You know what? I can't even remember the world
I know.
before the internet,
So-
or cell phones for that matter.
A lot of time reading in libraries,
Wow.
looking at microfiche.
Real research,
Yeah.
as I call it, not
Yeah.
just going to Wikipedia and
And I still use that. You know,
Yeah.
I still go and knock on doors, and
yeah.
you know, I tend not to do a huge amount with. Well, I do a lot with the internet, but I still believe in
Oh,
face-to-face
talking
contact.
to people.
Yeah.
No, it makes such a difference. It makes such a real difference, and you're proof of that in your interviewing style and skills too. So you worked over there, did that. What brought you to the U.S.?
The interest rate went up 3 times in a day,
Okay.
and my husband and I looked at each other, and we had green cards. We'd won our green cards in the green card lottery.
Okay. You did. My wife won her green card from Turkey in the lottery.
Yeah. Well, I sort of won it in the lottery. He got his in the lottery. I didn't get mine. I wasn't chosen.
Okay.
So we got married.
Okay.
But I think it
Well,
worked.
this guy was pretty good. He got you through film school, got to the USA.
Different boyfriend.
Oh, even better. I love it. I love it.
So on a whim, we said, right, let's go and live in New York. And the next day we put the house on the market.
Wow.
Within a month, we'd sold the house, and we were living in New York.
Incredible. What did you think about that? What was that like?
Well, I'd worked in New York
Okay.
before and loved it. I knew
Yeah.
I would love it.
Yeah.
And luckily, the BBC still had an office in New York.
Okay.
So I got a lot of work through them.
Great.
And then people in the UK who I'd worked for went, oh, great, she's in America now.
Yeah. Now
So-
our assignments can go to her.
So they would phone me and say, could you research this? And then because I'd done the research, they would go, well, you might as well go interview them.
Yeah.
So I'd get a crew together and go and interview the person I'd researched, send the rushes back, and that's how it all
And
began.
you had no real experience interviewing something. It was because you had a knowledge base for research
Yeah.
and you were in the location they needed.
Exactly.
Boom, now you're interviewing.
So that's how it
That's
started.
incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Opportunity. You know, that's something too that is so, I guess maybe unique to tell me if I'm wrong. There is so much opportunity around when you are in this industry if you are open for it, if you are willing to take the chance. I mean, I look at the things that people have gotten me right now. As we speak, I've got a crew out, lighting Oprah Winfrey and Meryl Streep
Yeah.
and Natalie Portman doing a panel discussion on the Me Too right now. That came up yesterday.
Yeah.
Now, that is a hassle to do in that short of a time, but if you want it, you say yes, and it's there. But that's the opportunity that keeps coming through for all of us,
One of my favourite, the mantra I live by is luck is a talent. You have to put yourself out there.
I love that. Luck is a talent. I love that.
And I'm very careful about the jobs I accept.
Yes.
I don't do anything that feels grubby, that will hurt somebody.
Right.
So I do say no to jobs,
Okay.
but I'm very impulsive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I get a phone call going, can you get on a plane now? I will very often
You know
go,
what?
yeah.
That gets the synapse going,
Yeah.
doesn't it? It is the same for me, and I liken it when the phone rings, it's a chance to win the lottery.
It's good to have ADHD in this industry.
Mandatory. mandatory to have. No, no ability to, just what you said.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you cannot, I go from one thing to another. In fact, I think I've almost been totally ruined by it, because I'm on Facebook now. But even before there was Facebook, even before there was social media, I want it now. I want another hit. I want another feel-good phone call,
Well, it is. It's the adrenaline. It's addictive.
Yeah, yes,
So,
yes.
I've had occasion where the children have gone to school in the morning and I've got a phone call going, can you get to somewhere now? Get the next plane.
Yeah.
I have a wash bag permanently packed and I'm packing. As I'm getting the brief, I'm just throwing clothes into a bag and I have gone. And they come home from school
Where's
and I've
Mom?
gone. And I'll be gone for 10 days to make an hour-long program.
Mom's in Africa. That is incredible. That is incredible. Let's talk, because I know you've got, and really, I don't even know the not even the half of it. I don't even know a tenth of it. But what I do know about is the jobs. And let's just see if I can recall, and we can talk about jobs, and you can throw any other interesting jobs in it. First of all, you've done all the celebrities. Let's talk about them a little later. But let's talk about some of the big jobs. One job that I know that you had, and because you were doing it while I was talking to you about another job, was that one in Mexico where you were doing a documentary on plane crashes. And tell us about that. What did you do down in Mexico?
That was the most fantastic job I've ever done.
Wow.
One Sunday morning, I was happily doing homework with the kids and the phone rang and an exec said, are you free? Can you get to Mexicali now, this afternoon? And he briefed me. Basically, the production company was crashing a 727 in the desert.
727 Boeing.
Yep,
Yeah, okay.
in the desert in Mexicali to see the science of a plane crash. And they needed an extra location PD, and they were very keen on using a woman because they wanted to get the human stories out of the scientists, the pilots, the military.
All the technical stuff, yeah.
And I did. I was in my pajamas 1 minute, and the next minute I was on the road to Mexicali thinking about planes.
Wow.
And spent a fantastic kind of 10 days, I think it was, with a huge crew because, of course, the plane had to be rigged. There were high-speed cameras on the ground.
Right.
There were 3 main crews, so 3 producer-directors, 2 producer-directors from England.
Okay.
And then me, and then lots of people running around with cameras.
Right.
And it was one of the most fantastic jobs. I was up and down in this old plane. They'd found the plane in the plane graveyard, I think in Arizona.
Okay.
And Big Flo, she was called.
Okay.
She was missing her back door because that's how the pilot, co-pilot, and engineer got out.
Okay. So what they wanted to do is they were filming this plane crashing into the desert, and of course they've got it loaded on the inside with all kinds of cameras. I'm assuming there's air crews, there's ground crews, everybody is covering this 6 ways to Sunday, right?
You're so right.
Yeah.
So most of the jobs I do, I'm usually just with a cameraman or camera person and sound person.
Yeah.
This job, the team, I didn't meet half the team. There must have been 80, 90 people
I'm sure.
running around. We took over a whole hotel and some.
Wow.
What we did, we had 3 planes that were up with the 727.
Okay.
One of them was remote control flying it. So
one of the planes was actually remote control on the 727.
Yeah.
But you said that's how the pilot and everybody got out. So tell us about that process.
well, the pilot would get the plane up
Yeah.
and fly. It was about a half-hour flight to near the crash zone.
Okay.
And then the remote control guy would take over and remote control fly it. So the pilot, co-pilot, engineer jumped. And we also had a jump master on board to make sure everyone was off. And he was the last person off.
Okay. So the pilot, the co-pilot, they had to put on the parachute and jump out the back door, right?
It literally jumped out the back door.
A la D.B. Cooper style.
Exactly.
Yeah. and so everybody got out. Now the plane is being flown, right? What was, and because I'm just using my imagination now, but I cannot imagine the tension at that point for the whole production. Now, no one's in the plane. There's a guy with I'm just assuming, a joystick of some sort.
It's just like a model aircraft
Okay.
joystick. It's so simple.
Wow.
But don't try this at home, folks.
Yeah. Don't crash your own plane. Yeah. And so then everybody's filming, and of course, every camera must be rolling. I mean, everybody's on tense. Do you remember that moment? Were you there viewing the crash of the plane in real time?
Well, I decided to go up in the tower because
Okay.
we had been following all week, and with getting the plane ready.
Right.
This was our last attempt to crash the plane. We had reached the end of our fuel, the end of our permit, the end of everything.
So this was it.
This was it, because the wind had been too high earlier in the week for people to jump.
God.
It wasn't. There wasn't fake drama. This was real.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we hadn't been up in the tower, and I said, "Well, hang on. It's the air traffic controller's job to keep a plane in the air.
Yeah.
And here we have an air traffic controller, and he is sending a plane off, and he knows it's not coming back. That's interesting." So everybody was on the crash.
Yeah.
My crew and I were up in the tower, and it was like a lighthouse. There was no elevator. It
Okay.
really was up.
Oh, wow.
And we got up there, and the air traffic controller was actually an ex-pilot, and he used to fly 727s. He was terribly emotional because he'd watched Big Flo sitting on the tarmac for about 6 months.
Sure.
And here he was sending her to her death.
Wow.
So he started crying, and they actually, in the end, opened the show with the tower.
Wow. So you, as a producer director, saw that emotional piece there that could go in. And of course, what's an air traffic controller except trying to keep a plane landing safely, in the air and landing safely, and now you're asking him to go and crash it. And it was that big of an emotional jump for him.
It was huge. And then there was
Wow.
drama on the ground.
Yeah.
Because the plane that had the remote control flying system in developed a gas leak. You couldn't write it. So we saw them
So now the remote control plane's leaking fuel,
on the ground, can't take
and
off.
you're out of time.
Out of time.
Yeah.
It all has to happen. And we're
Wow.
up the stairs, and I'm like, okay, guys, I'm sorry, but we're going back down the stairs and onto the tarmac, to find out why this plane isn't taking off. And they have to switch the remote control flying
sure.
device to a slower plane. We know it can't keep up with the 727. It's huge drama.
Oh,
It was honestly
gosh.
one of the best
So
jobs.
almost the behind the scenes was as dramatic as anything that you put on the
as the plane
screen.
crash.
Wow.
And then sometimes I fly 17 times a month because I can
Sure.
work for 3 or 4 production companies a week.
Sure.
And as a crew member who flies regularly, to then get onto an aircraft that's crashed, we were the first team onto the plane after it had crashed to see what happens in a plane crash.
So your team was there filming all of that.
We were on the plane after
Was
the
Simon
crash.
with you?
Yes, he was my
yes.
cameraman.
Simon, your husband,
Yeah.
was your cameraman.
Yeah.
Simon Fanthorpe.
Simon
Yeah.
Fanthorpe,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. That is so awesome. Well, what were your thoughts as you entered that plane? Because that's got to be, you know what I mean, a pretty emotional thing, especially if you do fly a lot. You know what I mean? It's mind-boggling. What was the plane like when it?
Well, we'd aimed for to emulate a crash that had happened in real life, and it was a sort of not a nosedive. It was a fairly soft landing.
I remember watching it. Yeah.
And even with a soft landing, which was survivable by many of the people in the, if they had been real people
there.
in the cabin.
Yes.
The mess on a plane, you're not prepared for the tangle of wires, seats everywhere, luggage. It, makes you really realise that if you're in a plane crash, first of all, you need to be fit. You can't be overweight.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you're dead weight, people aren't going to lift you out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
You need to be aware of your... When the cabin crew are saying, the 2 exits at the back, the 2 at the front,
Yeah.
know your exits.
Don't be texting on your phone at that point,
Look
right?
and see where the exits
Yeah,
are. Look
yeah.
at how you're going to go out, get out.
Yeah.
And I do tend to now sit in the middle of the plane fairly near.
Close to the door.
Yeah.
Close to the exit. So you do that after your experience of seeing this. You think that, it's funny because on a jet too, the same thing I think about. I go, look, after we land, how long it takes just to get out of your seat.
Yes.
How do you do that in an emergency situation? And certainly people have children on there, and there's elderly people, and certainly, unfortunately, you know, overweight people, some that can't move as well down an aisle. You know, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's really terrifying. That is a very interesting story, and I'm glad I asked you because I did not know a lot of that. So, give me. I know we did the Rolling Stones, but I think that is sort of, I don't know how far we could go into that story, not because there's anything secret about it, but just give us a little bit of that, because I think that's sort of a more typical thing for you, right? That's I mean, the Stones are the Stones, but that's sort of the type of clients you get.
Well, there's no typical. I mean, I tend to do a lot of factual and then a lot of factual entertainment. With the Stones, a phone call came out of the blue, and they said, we need a grown-up.
Okay.
We need somebody who's not fazed by celebrity. And I said, you know, I don't care about celebrity.
Yeah.
But they didn't tell me who it was
Okay.
until I think it was, you know, 2 days before the shoot.
Right.
And I can remember the moment where I phoned you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when,
I remember the moment too.
Burnie,
Yeah.
you'll never guess who it is. Are you sitting down?
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, you know, my brief was they wanted to get stories out, people's memories about sticky fingers. That was my brief.
Okay. And that was it.
That was it. Wow. And you know, go. But there is no usual with me. You know, and I particularly enjoy factual. You know, celebrity's fantastic, and people are always saying, "Who's your favorite interviewee?" And
I hear you. I
really love real people.
Yeah.
Real people's stories.
Yeah.
And giving people an opportunity to talk and to tell their story. And I really like the darker side, the grittier side of life.
Yeah.
So, you know, the documentary I worked on for 15 months, which we delivered last July, is the sort of thing I love doing.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to take one more break, and we're going to come right back. All right?
Burnie's workshop is fantastic. Burnie's workshop is awesome. Burnie's workshop is insightful.
Burnie, in one word, passionate maybe. You can tell he really cares a lot.
Burnie is a badass.
He's a great teacher. He has great stories, and I would recommend this to anyone. Not only someone like me who's starting day one, but you know, I feel that in any profession, as you sharpen your sword, it always gets sharper.
I think the best thing about this is the access to understanding how to run your business, how to actually be in this filmmaking industry and make money at it. Coming to this workshop, I think, is what actually gets you the tools to understand how to do that, how to get out there and sell yourself.
I thought that was really cool. I thought, he knows all the tricks in the book, and he knows how to show that to us and actually demonstrate it so we actually know what he's talking about.
I really like the hands-on experience. That's something that you don't find a lot. That's something you have to go on set a lot to just appreciate.
I know this is lighting seminar, but it's not only talk about lightings. He also share his business experience, personal experience, and guide us to what we should do, what kind of personality we should have in this business.
His stories, I think that kind of say everything in a few example stories that he gives out from time to time.
I would recommend this workshop to anybody who just spread into the industry, people who just don't know the swing of it. A lot of the stuff they don't teach you in film school.
I deal with a lot of freelancers every day, a lot of peers that I went to school with, a lot of professionals in the field, and they all need to take this class because it puts you on the next level, on the next playing field.
Burnie's a great guy. Burnie's really authentic. Like everything he learns, everything he teaches, the way he handles himself, the way he deals with other people, he's a one-of-a-kind guy. Someone I've never come across before in the industry, and someone I hope to emulate and hope that there are more people like him out there that can help.
Hey everybody, here we are. We're back with Sarah Hunt, and there is so much that we're going over. I'm sitting here right now in the last third of the show here, and I'm going, we're never going to get to all of the stuff that I know you've done, and you're going to have to come back for sure. But let's just push on here too, because I know that we've talked a little bit about the celebrities, and I know you've got a million celebrity stories, but I don't think we'll get into them there. Except let me just say, you're the only person I know who Rod Stewart has actually individually serenaded. So yeah, you're in that category with me.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, it's one of my perks of my job.
Yeah.
Is that I'll say to somebody, sing that, play that.
Yeah.
And suddenly I've got Rod Stewart singing to me. Chris Martin sang to me.
Wow.
You know, Richard Sherman, who wrote all those classic Disney.
Yeah.
He was at a baby grand playing to me. And that's when you pinch yourself.
Yeah.
And you think, is
this real?
Is this the right Sarah Hunt? You're expecting a tap on your shoulder. You know, I'm just a girl from Birmingham, England, and
Right.
suddenly I'm here and they're talking to me.
Yeah. And that's the magic of our industry. That's really, you get to be that Walter Mitty type person who suddenly stumbles into the well-lit scene, you know. But I know you've done lots of other work. You've got one here. What was this one? One Deadly Weekend? What was that about?
Well, that just shows how it's a very small industry.
Mm-hmm.
The exec from the plane crash
Okay.
documentary called me out of the blue, beginning of February 2016.
Okay.
And said, I've got this tiny idea, this idea we've had as a production company to take an average weekend in America and look into the gun violence. Would you be interested in researching it, developing it, and if it goes, producing it? And I said, absolutely. That, you know, I like the darker side. I like real stories.
Yeah.
And so, One Deadly Weekend in America.
And how was that set up? Did you just cover different events that happened in one weekend all over the United States?
Well, I was interested in finding out if there was a pattern in gun violence. You know, are there more shootings on July the 4th or a full moon? Didn't find a pattern. So if you don't find a pattern, you go with story.
Yeah.
And I'm loath to actually call true life cases story, but
Right.
I went with cases where I knew there would be accessibility, and with cases to show a range of gun crime. And we really did pick an average weekend and look at all the cases, and then selected 7 cases. And I contacted these families
Who had just lost someone.
who had just lost somebody or had somebody badly injured in gun crime. Nobody said no. So
Wow.
6 months earlier, they were dealing with funerals, and they all wanted to talk. They all wanted to tell their children's stories. And these were all
heartbreaking.
all cases that were really just a few lines in the local paper. They weren't major cases.
Yeah.
And out of that, you know, 15 months later, we delivered a 90-minute documentary to the BBC.
Is British companies, are they your main clients? I know they're not all your clients, but you because of your background, because of your connections, you know what I mean? That is where a lot of your work comes from. Is that correct?
Well, I'm bilingual.
Yeah. Yes, you
speak-
speak British,
And American. So
but I can still understand you. That's a strange thing.
well,
you know.
I put a U in every
Oh,
now
I
and
see.
again. You know,
keep it easy for me.
neighbour, behaviour, they've all got U's in. You can hear those. Largely, my clients are British.
Yeah.
A lot of British American co-production. So I work
Sure.
a lot for Nat Geo, Discovery.
Okay.
You know,
Say BBC's got you, and then they've got a deal for Discovery or
Exactly.
Nat Geo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
but my phone, I'll wake up to an email. I start the day early because of the time difference with the UK.
Sure.
I get an email. I immediately call. You know, those New Year's resolutions that I won't go on email before 9 a.m. Out of the window. I was on at 5 a.m. this morning answering those Monday morning emails.
Wow.
People contact me. They say we've got a production.
And I know how fast it happens because I've actually been on the phone with you. In fact, trying to do this, you got one from the BBC that had you cover all of the fires in Southern California, the bad fire season we've just had for the BBC. Was it the BBC?
It was the BBC. So,
Yeah.
so not news. I don't do news.
Yeah.
This is.
This was a documentary.
It's a documentary about natural phenomena, and they
Yes.
went fire.
Hey.
It's natural.
What's more natural? Yeah.
And I was scrambled and embedded with the Forestry Service and the fire
Wow.
department covering the Thomas fire.
And just like that.
Just
and,
like
and
that.
now you're in the middle of the action in one of the biggest fires in California history.
Exactly.
It's
and
amazing.
sadly, one of my friends from college, from the art school in England, I was texting her going, well, I'm on this ridge and we've got the flames and they're going in this direction. And I was getting, moment by moment reports from the fire department, texting to her because she was 4 ridges over. And at 1 a.m. that morning, she and her family lost their house and their possessions in that fire.
And that really brings it home to you.
Oh,
I mean,
hit
there's
me,
a person from your past, your background, and she's 4 ridges away and loses her home. Yeah, that makes it very personal. I mean, also too is like I've talked to guys who've done a lot of news. You know what I mean? When Bondiashi, I think that's the way that tidal wave, the first sort of big
tsunami,
one, the tsunami. I was talking to Dennis Dillon, in fact, and his assistant who was over there. They were with Dan Rather over there doing it. And the first time I had really talked to anybody about the emotional state, and they go, after a while you're just broke down. You can't do it anymore. You're about a week of that, and you've seen so much death, so much pain, so much suffering. It's crying around you 24 hours a day. That it has an effect. Have you ever had anything like that?
Yes, I did 2 back-to-back documentaries. I did the young ladies who were held captive in Cleveland. It was one of those ones.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Where you get the phone call, it's like, get on a plane, get to Cleveland, and you're scrambling to work out the story, what it's about. And there are a lot of things that don't make the air. When you interview the doctors, and off the record they tell you what the girls went through.
Right.
That starts to get into your psyche.
Yeah.
That finished, I think it was 4 days later. And and we're up all night feeding rushes.
Of course.
And working on stories.
And you're focused on the story.
You go into like super focus.
Yes.
Because you want to deliver, you want to please.
It's a job at that point.
It's a job.
Yeah.
And my big thing is I'm very, very ethical. I want to tell the truth.
Yes, of course.
And I want to give people a chance to talk and tell their story, and it has to be the truth.
Yeah.
And 4 days later, I was back home in California, just catching up with sleep. When the Moore, Oklahoma tornado hit. And suddenly I'm with people who've lost their children. Midwestern farmers.
That was a horrible.
Yeah. I'm in a helicopter looking at the path of the tornado, how random it is. You're living with people who've lost everything.
Yeah.
Midwestern farmers collapsing in my arms. And I can, I'm a very huggy person.
Yeah, yeah.
You hold them and they cry.
Yeah.
And then you leave it and you're suddenly back to your neat and tidy world where you've got a refrigerator.
Right.
That really gets to you.
Yeah. So that is what, that really made an emotional response with you and did it. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. Yeah. Reporters, camera people, producers, directors, you don't just walk away from this stuff. It's not, we're not machines, we're people. You don't turn it on and off. It really has an effect on you. That is so important, and I'm so glad you used that in those examples of stories, because I think it's really easy to look. I think you're so much more removed just watching it on your TV at home. I don't think you get that if you're there and you're smelling the smells, if you're seeing people with that lost look on their face, that's what makes it real to you.
I've walked into dead bodies.
Oh, wow.
Backing up with the cameraman.
Oh, wow.
And you feel something in your back, and it's a foot.
Oh.
And you turn to apologize, and they're dead.
Oh.
The smell of death is, something you can't get out of your nose. But conversely, you're also, people are very relieved to talk. It is like therapy when contributors have been through something terrible.
Yeah.
The opportunity to talk, they all say, "Thank you for letting me talk." So you are doing a service because you're letting people talk about the tragedy,
right?
But you're also letting people know what's gone on in people's lives, and people, you are educating.
Oh yes, absolutely, very much so, and it can happen to you. Nobody thinks they're going to be in a disaster until after they're in a disaster. You know what? I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. There's a couple things I'm going to cover. I know you want to get to a funding thing that you're doing to help somebody out, so we'll talk about that. But for right now, anybody out there who's interested in saying, that sounds like a great, you know what I mean? I'd love to do something like that. Give me, because you're so experienced, here's what you must do to get into this position. In other words, you must be ethical, you must be on time, you have good skills. Just give me some of those. What comes off the top of your head?
Well, I think be interested. Listen to people's stories. And out of those stories, something will spark. You'll think, oh my gosh, that could make a really interesting item. You know, you just drive around Hollywood and look at the homeless people.
Yeah.
Talk to homeless people. Find out their story, where they've come from. And then you don't have to go to film school. Don't worry about shelling out thousands and thousands for film school. Everyone's got a camera on their phone. Record things, make notes, take telephone numbers. You know, I've got all my contact books from all my jobs because you never know when you're going to need, you know, the medical examiner's number or that interesting guy you met on the subway who told you about how he started playing the steel drums in Jamaica and where he'd live. Just be interested in people.
Wow, that is great, great advice. That's great advice. I really appreciate that. And you know, you come up with such great ideas. Interviewing a homeless person is probably the best thing you could do, even for yourself personally, because suddenly now they're not just some thing there, which is how you kind of think of them as oh, that's a homeless guy. You don't think, oh, that's a person who's down on their luck, hurting. You think, oh, that's a homeless person. But making them human, that's what you do in your business. In our business, we make people human, and I think that's so important. Now, I know you've got a campaign going to help someone. Who is that person? Was it this lady that you were talking about? Okay, let's give me a little bit of that.
Well, the thing I love about the college I semi-attended is that we've all kept in touch. And one of the girls I was at film school with lives just, 80 miles up the coast in Carpinteria. And sadly, she lost her home. She and her family lost her home and all their possessions in the Thomas fire. And I thought, what can I do? What can I do? I know people want to help.
Yeah.
So I started a You Caring campaign.
Okay.
Because they live a very off-the-grid lifestyle, which means that they're not going to get help.
I think we've got it up there right now.
Fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not going to get help from FEMA. As far as I'm aware, because they live, they have their own well and they're powered by solar. They live in the hills.
Yeah.
And so anyone who wants to donate the cost of a Starbucks to help them rebuild.
That's huge.
That's
very nice. That's
really,
very nice.
Appreciated.
Yeah, yeah. Very good of you. And I know you had a personal connection here, but thank you for doing that. And here's another thing. You're doing this as one of us. A media person, but I also think about, because you hear about this a lot, how often police departments or fire departments will start a fund for somebody. And I always think that I wish we were a little better than that. Like, don't rely on those first responders to be it. I wished we had a little bit more that we could put aside for everybody who has some problems and needs some help. Because just to bring this kind of back to my own experience here, I had a friend who was sitting in his front room watching TV with his 2 children. When he came conscious again, a car had driven into the living room and killed the 2 people who were in the car. And his family, sitting on the couch, was somehow miraculously safe. But the house was destroyed. They had nothing. You know what I mean? And this was like 11 o'clock at night. So now they're all of a sudden, you don't have a place to stay even, And so just my own little experience from that, I realized that, wow, and somebody did just what you're doing, and people, so please, in fact, if you could put that up there again, Sean, maybe just show it. But can you give us what the address of it is? Do you recall it?
I don't recall it.
Okay.
So, because it's a long one.
It's a long one.
It's my friends' names.
Yeah, just check that out. And if you can help them out, that'd be a great thing. Yeah. That'd be a great thing. What's next? What are you working on next?
Gosh, I've just finished a series of interviews for a British TV programme, which was very interesting. Some celebrity interviews.
Okay, who did you interview?
John Cleese.
Oh, what fun!
He's one of the people that
You probably know him pretty good, don't you?
I'm almost on his Christmas card list. That's one of those fun ones where you see the same people again and again and again.
And they remember you,
But it's about treating people properly.
Right.
Or, don't use people.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
don't assume you're more of a person in their
Yeah.
life than you actually are, and
Yeah.
respect just like you would anybody new or that's maybe not family, but you know, an acquaintance.
But things come around, you know, you can't just sort of bulldoze your way into somebody's life because
Right.
you may bump into them again and they're going to remember you and they're going to remember your name. So
Right.
treat people properly, treat people with respect.
Yep.
And then I've got an interesting couple of proposals which I can't talk about,
Oh,
but I'm
interesting.
hoping one of those comes off. Either way, I'm set up work-wise for a while, but
That's
there's
great.
one I really want.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
good. Oh, how can somebody get a hold of Sarah Hunt?
Sarah at spincycle.tv. Spincycle, like the washing machine.
Okay, Sarah at spincycle.tv. All right, very good. Sarah, thank you so
It's always a
much.
pleasure.
Oh, all mine. Tell Simon I said, Simon Fanthorpe, great DP.
Thank you.
Yeah, tell him I said hi. And that's it. We'll see you next week on Bernie's Applebox. Cut. That's a wrap.